So today what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make the polo shirt flat. We're going to do it step by step. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is open up Illustrator and go to New File. Now, I don't have any size specifications for this assignment, so you can really use anything. I generally like to do print in case ever I do want to print out any of my work. I know letter size works really well and works with most printers. That's the size that we most commonly use in printers. So I like to tend to do it like that. So if we choose letter and make create, we'll create our file and our artboard. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a reference image, and you can find that in the assignment. So here it is. If you go ahead and click on that link on the assignment on Brightspace, you can find this JPEG image. Once you have it open, you can go ahead and right-click on the image and hit Copy Image. Once you have it copied, it's on your clipboard, so you can go ahead over to Illustrator and either go to Edit, Paste, or just hit Control V. Now it's a very large file, and it is larger than our image right here, our artboard, our 8.5 by 11. So we're going to need to sort of squish it down a little bit. So first thing we want to do is zoom out. Now I like to use the keyboard shortcuts in Illustrator, and zoom out is Control negative, and to zoom in again is Control positive. I like to use the keyboard shortcuts because I think they're a little bit faster, and you can zoom in and out while drawing without having to switch tools. If you like using the tool to zoom, it is right here, and you can use this tool to zoom in or to zoom out, as the little video is showing you. Okay, once I can see the entire image, I want to grab that black arrow, the selection tool. Now remember that this tool will allow us to rotate, scale, and move whole things. This image is a whole thing, just like a connection of lines or shapes that we draw would be that whole object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to one of these little bounding boxes, preferably on the corner, and I'm going to hold the Shift key down. While I'm holding that Shift key down, I'm going to click and drag with my mouse to make the image smaller. I'm going to click and drag until I get the image within my artboard. Now it should be noted that, now Control positive to zoom back in, that these proportions constraint is the exact opposite in Illustrator than it is in Photoshop. When we have an image in Photoshop, it will automatically constrain the proportions when we scale it, bigger or smaller. When we hit the Shift key in Photoshop, it allows us to alter the proportions, either make it thinner or wider, whereas it's the opposite in Illustrator. We hold that Shift key to constrain the proportions, make sure it doesn't get thinner or fatter when we resize it, and if we were not to hold the Shift key down, we would be able to go ahead and resize it thinner or wider or whatever else. So now that we have our image in place and at a good size, what I want to do is come over to my layers. And sometimes this little guy, the color guide, he's sort of sitting right on top of what you want, because what you want is this guy right here. That's our Create New Layer. And we're going to hit that, and we'll see a new layer pop up right above layer 1 here. This will allow us to work on top of our image, get rid of it easily, and also toggle the visibility on and off to see our finished drawing from our original image. I'm going to go one step further, and right beside our eye, which is our visibility, I'm going to lock layer 1. I just click that little box right there, and we got that lock. That lock is going to prevent me from clicking on, selecting, moving, or altering, or interacting in any way with layer 1. So we can be sure that we're completely separately working on layer 2. Okay, a couple other things to set up before we get going is I would like a nice guideline in the middle here to show me the middle of this garment. Remember that we use the symmetry of garments to not do quite as much work, let's say. So to be able to get a nice guideline, I want to first go to View so I can pop my rulers right up here. I'm going to go down here to where it says Rulers, and you might have to scroll down a little bit. So when you first come up, oh, it is there, but if you don't see it or you want to get to the rest of the view menu, there are these little arrows that you can click to see more of it. Under Rulers, I'm going to go to the drop-down menu and select Show Rulers. You can see the rulers pop up right here and right here. They're in, I believe, pixels right now, which should be okay, but if you want to change them, you can always go to Edit Preference and change what unit your rulers show up in. For right now, I'm just going to use that black arrow, and I'm going to click on the vertical ruler over here. I'm going to click and hold the mouse button down, and as I hold that mouse button down, I'm going to drag it over here and place it right in the middle of my garment. Now this is going to be my little reference guide. I'm going to work on one half of this, start and stop, where that guide lets me know is the middle. All right, I'm ready to start my drawing. Now what I want to do first is I'm going to make a regular black and white flat sketch and then fill it with color. And I'm going to do that by preparing my colors over here. The first thing I want is I want a nice black outline, and I don't want any color in the middle. I don't want it to fill up with any sort of color. This will allow me to see the garment as I work. Now, if I had something in my fill box, it would, as I started drawing, it would fill with that color, and I wouldn't be able to see my reference image anymore. So I really only want a line color. And if you remember from our intro video, this square with the hole in the middle of it is our outline or stroke. That's just the line color. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on it and select black. Sometimes you've got to select that black and say OK. And see it go away. And do it again. And say OK. Sometimes you got to tell it twice, I guess. From here, I'm going to go ahead and select my pen tool right up here. And we can go ahead and start drawing our image. Now, when I start my image, I'm going to make it as ideal as possible. So an image or reference image, especially of clothing, might have a little wrinkle or a little asymmetry in it. And we can sort of point out some things that maybe are a little wrinkly or a little folded in on this image. And we're going to do it really as ideal as possible. So we're going to ignore little wrinkles or curves or things like that and make it as clear and ideal as possible, as if this thing were flat as a board. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I always like to be zoomed in as much as possible. And I'm going to start my line right here. So right now I just want to tackle the outline. So I'm going to go ahead and give a click. And I want this line to be straight over here. So I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And I'm going to go slightly off of that hem. And I'm going to now hold that Shift key. See how it snaps down? The Shift will snap into different angles. Totally flat, 45 degrees, and totally straight. So if you know that you're going totally straight, or you want something totally squared out, from a certain point, you can hold down that shift key to ensure you get that perfectly straight or perfectly horizontal or perfectly straight up line. Now I'm going to come all the way up here and give a click at the armpit. Now you see it's bending. It's a little bit away from the actual outside of the image, but we're not going to worry about that because we're making a perfect here. And I know that's a straight line, so I'm going to keep it straight. Likewise, I'm not going to have that little divot down here, and I'm going to go straight out to my cuff right here. Now, if this is a little tiny for you, hit Control positive. Don't be afraid of that zoom. That zoom is your friend. And then I'm going to come out right here. And see, it's a little bit over, but I'm going to go straight up to here. There's a little bit of a curve here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to incorporate it. Click and hold. This is my first curved line. So remember, when we make curved lines, I click and hold the mouse button down, and this is just a little bit I want to sort of incorporate there. And once I'm still clicking and holding the mouse button down, and I drag the mouse button away from that anchor point that I just placed. And that will start to curve the line depending on, where I go and in what direction. So I'm going to get one that sort of fits it nicely and then continue up. And you see, I get still a continuation of that curve line. Maybe I want just a little bit more to get that shoulder in there. Boop. Now this is very straight from here, so what I want to do is I'm going to come back to that last anchor point, and you see that preview line is curved because it's being curved by this. Because when we curve a line, not only do we curve that line that we're placing, but we're informing the curve of the line that is yet to come. But we don't always want it curved. In this instance, I don't want a curved line. So I'm going to go back here and click on that anchor point. Now see, I want to make sure that I get that little upside down V mark. That little upside down V mark is our convert anchor point signifier. It means that when I click on this point, it's going to take those curve handlebars away, and I can continue that line straight. Now I'll go straight up here, and that's a little sort of soft curve up here. Then I'll go all the way straight here to the end of our outside line. It's our end because it's the middle. This is our last curve line I want to make. Again, I'm going to click and hold the mouse button down, move the mouse away from our anchor point until the curve aligns with our outside line, and then release. Now I'm done for right now. I'm done with this line. So I'm going to go over to our select tool, or our black arrow tool, and give it a click. And that will end our line. I'm going to zoom out so we can see our whole line, and we see we have it all the way up here. All right, I'm going to continue on. I'll go ahead and do our internal seams here and here, and then we'll do the collar. So before I start, I want to deselect the existing line by clicking off of it. This means when I do lines here, it will be less likely to interact with that existing line. So I want to go ahead and zoom in on that sleeve. Again, don't squint, don't hurt your eyes. Use the zoom function. Start right down here at the armpit. And this is going to be a curved line. So I'm going to go up. I tend to like to look at sort of the middle of my curves or the end of my curves and make my anchor point. At this point, I'm going to make it at the middle. And I'm going to click again, holding that mouse button down, moving the mouse button away, dragging it away until I get the curve that I want, and then releasing. Now that subsequent curve is going to look quite nice for me. That's its purpose. So I'm going to continue up. And then we have that little bit of that straight line just there. All right. There is our seam, our shoulder seam, or I'm sorry, sleeve seam, armhole seam. Now I want to go ahead and get this guy in here. Now this is attaching our cuff, which appears to be a rib trim, which is very common in knit garments. And we'll just click, click, right straight across. Remember, if you ever need to fix anything that you're doing, you can always do it with your white arrow. So say I didn't make this so nice, or I wanted to adjust the curve on my armhole seam, just switch over to your white arrow, select the line that you want to choose, and you can go ahead and move individual elements. You can move the individual points. You can even change the curve by grabbing those handlebars, just in case you want to. All right, we got our shoulder seam up here, so let's do that. And there's one other thing I want to get to before we tackle the collar. If we look down here, we have an interesting thing going on with the hem. Our hem is actually longer in the back than it is the front. Our front hem ends right here, and the back extends right here. So we're going to have to indicate that. So I'm going to go back to my pen tool. I'm going to go ahead and draw our front hem in. Again, this is a little curved and maybe a little crooked, but I want it to be perfectly straight. It's intended to be perfectly straight. Okay? So there it is. Now that we have all of our seams, or at least all of the seams that will be symmetric, I want to go in and put our top stitch in. We can see while we're still down here, we have an edge of top stitch here that is creating our hem. We also have a little bit of top stitch right here. This is actually indicating that there is a vent here. So there is a small vent that goes up to right about where our top stitch ends right here. That is just creating a little extra ease around the hip area for whoever is wearing this shirt. Now to put in our top stitch, I'm going to go ahead and select our pen tool and make a line where the top stitch is, just the same way as we went ahead and made our normal lines. Okay? Now, once my line is made, I want to make sure that I've selected it with the black arrow, and I'm going to go to Properties. In Properties, I'm going to click on the stroke. The stroke has other properties hidden in it, just properties specifically for the stroke. And I'm going to select my dashed line. Okay? Now, I've set it to be at a good place for top stitch, but play around with your numbers. I actually have, it's a little weird, so I put in some different preferences. You might have some different preferences based on weight, so mine might look a little bit weird here, but just play around. If you never did anything to your preferences on units, I like to use 2. That's about 2 points, and that should work pretty well for you. Also, if you didn't do anything to your preferences, your stroke should be about 1. And when we reduce it, because we do want to reduce it slightly, I'm going to go ahead and make it less. You can go ahead and just make it 0.5 if yours is at 1. Oh, that was apparently too small. So I'm just going to fiddle with it a little bit more to make it a little bit thinner. There we go. And all you really want is you just want it a little bit thinner than your main lines because then it will go ahead and look a little bit more like top stitch. You just want it to be a little bit thinner. So there's my top stitch right here. Now, this will remember the points for my next line, which is good if you want to do another top stitch line, which I actually do. And I'm going to go ahead and make this little box. And I'll actually go ahead and put that top stitch down here too. That is something that I can see, even if I zoom in real close. So we see there's a little bit of top stitch right here. Now, you might say, oh, that's so specific. But this is also folded here. But the thing is, this is showing people how it is supposed to be hemmed and finished. So even those little details, as minute as they might be, are still important. Now, you can see here, this is actually now I want to have this be a solid line. This is where it's folded. A quick way to go back to it is if I grab my eyedropper tool while it is selected and click on the line that I want it to resemble, it will automatically go to whatever weight and properties are associated with that line. So I can do that too with if I want to go really quickly back to my top stitch as well. All right, so I'm going to zoom out. And if we go up here, we've got our hem covered. The last thing we got to do is our collar. So if we take a look at the collar, I know I'm working on this side, but see how this side, it's a little bunched up? It looks much nicer on this side. So I'm actually going to use this side of the collar to make my drawing. Remember, we're only going to do half, but if there's something on your drawing where, this is just looking a lot nicer than this one, I might as well just use this as my reference instead. So again, I'm going to not be afraid to zoom in. It does make it easier and easier to draw and easier on your eyes. So I'm going to go ahead now and come back and make my collar shape. It's a little bit of a curve there, so I'm going to go ahead and click and hold the mouse button down while dragging away. All right, that's the last time I'm talking about the curves, but I will say, so obviously this subsequent curve is preventing my line from matching up. I want a nice pointy point right there. So I'm going to go back, look for that upside down V. Come on. There it is. And click. And that will allow me to continue on with a nice straight line. And I'll come up here again, make it curved. But again, I want to go back, look for that upside down V and click. And come up right here. And I'm going to follow it along and end up right there. Right now, my subsequent curve is doing a nice job. All right. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is a little bit of this placket right here, and then we'll be ready to flip for the other side. I'll start right here. This should be straight. You see how that's a little bit wiggly, but it's been intended to be straight. We want it to be made as straight as possible, so I'm going to draw it as straight as possible. Now we also see there's a little bit of top stitch. There's a little bit of top stitch to finish the placket off here, and also to reinforce the base of the pocket right here. So I'm going to go ahead and make my line. That would be my top stitch line. And one more. Now I'm going to go ahead and use that same trick. I'm going to select both these guys. First this guy, so I actually have two elements that I'm selecting. this one, and then I'm going to hold Shift to select this one. When you hold your Shift key down, it will allow you to highlight multiple lines or objects at once. I'm going to zoom out, scroll down to where I have my top stitch, grab my eyedropper tool, and select. Oop, I selected the blue, which is actually what we're going to do later to colorize it. But I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it's a very small area to select. And then select right on that line. Boop. And I can see that it did it because I can see the properties and over here change. So I know when I zoom out, I'll get to see a nice top stitch right here. So I'm going to hold off on the buttons because they are right in the middle. So we'll just put them on at the very end. Last thing I want to do, it is symmetric, so I'm going to put in these little seams right here. So let's go ahead and they're the same on both sides, so I'll just continue working on this side. Now I'm not going to go, actually I'm going to go all the way to the middle here because we are going to put that label in. Maybe not quite all the detail, but we'll go ahead and put it in because I'm going to put this in later, sort of like the buttons as a finishing thing, and I'll put it right on top here so we can go right to the very middle. It's okay. But I do want that to be our solid color right there. And actually, see, I'm going to move it. I'm going to correct it a little bit. There we go. Another little band right here that I'll put all the way to that middle. And there is top stitch in here too. Boop, boop. So let's go ahead. And again, now you can really see why having that top stitch be a thinner weight is quite useful as well. Now I drew this line, but if you actually, there's a better way of doing it. Of course, you can do it like this and then apply your top stitch just like so. But for this bottom one, I'm going to show you actually a little bit of a faster way to do it. So let's just apply that top stitch just like before. See this guy? I'm just going to, this is pretty much the same line, so I'm just going to copy and paste him. Place him. And then apply the top stitch. It's a little faster than having to draw the other one. It actually can be if you're doing like a top stitch all along a very ruffled or flared hem. This can be a very time-saving sort of technique. All right. Now we have the whole image. We have all of our lines, and we can see that. If you ever do want to see, I can just toggle off right here. Toggle back on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this for this side, and we can go ahead and flip this for this side as well, because of course I will need to do that. So the best way to do this is with my black arrow, I want to select all of the lines that I've made so far. So what I did right here is with my black arrow, I clicked and dragged. I'll do that again just to show you. So I'm going to click and drag. And as I drag, there's this box that comes out. Everything in that box will become highlighted. This is also a way you can select multiple things at once. And you can see all elements of my shirt are now connected, or highlighted, I should say. So what I want to do is I now want to reflect this. And there's a few ways to do this. The fastest way, the way I like to do it, is now to right-click and go to transform and reflect. Okay? Now, if you didn't want to do that, if you like using the menus, you can also go to object, transform, reflect. They bring you to the same window, and you can see it's already flipped it. These two guys are saying, how do I want to flip it? The way you're going to want to flip it is vertical. The difference is the line of symmetry. You know, remember how we placed this vertical line? Well, it's flipping it over that vertical line. If you were to flip it over a horizontal line, you would get it to be flipped upside down. So this is what it normally will say, and that's good because that's normally what we want. You can also set an angle of symmetry if you want it to not be horizontal or vertical. I've never used this option, but I don't know, maybe you guys will at some point. Now what I want to do is when I come down here, I want to hit copy. As you can see, it's just transforming everything, but I want my original half to stay and I want a new flipped half. So what we'll do, it will flip that copy instead of flipping the original. So I'm going to hit copy. Now it's there, but it's not in the right place. But it knows, Illustrator knows enough that it is still in the right vertical alignment. So I'm going to use the arrows on my keyboard to push it over until we get it to the right place. Now I am going to be basing this less on, see how it's not coming out here? But I want it to line up here on this line of symmetry more than I want it to line up over here. That's more important because I want something that is nice and symmetrical. Okay. Now this might mean that we might need to clean up some areas, and we can see it even a little bit better if I turn off the original image. We can see that these guys don't look so nice, and that the shoulder seam is going a little bit too far up, probably because we did it on the side where the collar was bunched up. So I can go ahead and zoom in, and using that white arrow, select this guy and tuck him into where he should be. If there are any other little places that, you know, might be sticking up or coming out, we can always adjust them. It's always nice to have a good clean. But also double check what zoom you're on. Sometimes you'll get these little, just like what I'm fixing right now. But to be quite honest, once you're zoomed out to the proper, see this is 100%, you're really not going to notice it. So, don't get too dragged into the details. Now we do have this little bit of a double collar right here, and some gaps right here. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and grab again these guys. I'm not going to worry too much about the top stitch because the top stitch will break up anyways. Now what I want to do is I want to remove this double collar here, and it's actually going to be able to allow me to show you a very useful tool, especially in flats. They hide it. Sometimes you can't find it very easily, but if you come over to the eraser tool, click and hold the mouse button down, and any tool that has these little triangles next to it has a subcategory for that tool. So if I hold the mouse button down on the eraser tool, it allows me to select the scissors tool. The scissors tool is very, very useful for us because it allows us to cut lines. So essentially what I want to do is I want to take this portion of the line out of my drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it right here and cut it right here. That's going to allow me to select just that little bit and delete it. And I can go back and clean up with my white arrow. Just push that guy down a little bit, and let's go ahead and just let him sort of match up there a little bit better. We'll do that same thing over here. Boop. And boop. Select with the black arrow and delete. And we'll go back. I did a better job cutting there. So remember I'm at 800 zoom. So this looks like, oh no, you need to fix that. But really when we get back down to 100 zoom, which is how it would print out, you can't really see it. Maybe a little bit. So, right now, we're looking at a pretty good fashion flat. I, of course, would have to show the color blocking, the buttons, and everything else. But for all intents and purposes, this is a really good place. This is what most fashion flats will look like. And aside from the smaller detail, we'd end there. But we're not going to end there. Because we're going to go ahead and colorize this. We want this to look like this. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start the colorizing. And we're going to take advantage of Illustrator's layer function to do that. So I want my nice lines to stay on top of anything that I color in. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. But I'm going to grab my new layer, which is layer 3, and drag it underneath layer 2. That's going to allow all of my black lines to stay on top of my color work. And I can even go ahead and lock layer 2 because I know I'm not going to be working on it for a little bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my pen tool and I can do one of two things actually. I can go ahead and outline my entire drawing again, but remember we already did this and we want to save time. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on back to layer 2 for just a second, unlock it, and grab something that I need, which is our outline. Remember this outline that we did? And I'm going to copy it, Control C, or edit, copy. Remember to select what you want to copy before you copy it. Now I'm going to pop to layer 3, lock layer 2, and paste, Control V, or edit, paste, in my outline. And I can start from here. This is actually going to be fairly useful. So what I'm going to do is, now that this is highlighted, I want to fill it with this green color, which is going to be, I don't want to say majority, actually majority is blue, but it's what we're going to start with. It's going to be our quote-unquote base color. I'm going to grab that eyedropper tool. Remember when we messed up and made the top stitch that blue color? Well, we're going to do that same thing, but this time it's not going to be a mess up. I'm going to go and bring it to the green portion of the shirt and click green. Now you might say, hey, that doesn't look so green, it looks awful light. That is because if we actually zoom in on this color, you'll see there's areas of dark and areas of light. So I'm going to, ooh, very dark, very light. So I'm going to keep sort of clicking until I get a good middle color, one that looks pretty good and pretty close to the actual shirt. Now this looks pretty good. That looks pretty close to the actual color. So let's leave it there. Okay? The last thing I'm going to do is fill this in a little bit more. So I'm going to zoom in right up here because I really want this whole section to be green. So let's zoom in right here, and I'm going to extend this part. I'm going to grab my pen tool, and I want to pick up where this line left off. So see that slash mark? That means pick up this line, continue this line, and I do. So I'm going to click it, and I'm going to bring it all the way. Well, let's do the rest of our collar, actually. We'll bring it up and follow the rest of our collar all the way to the middle of our garment. All right. Now that I have half of it, I can do that same thing. And remember, this is only one object, so I can just click on it. And if we zoom in, let's make sure that it's looking good. I'm going to nudge the whole thing over just a little bit so we didn't get any of that overlapping. So it's fitting really nicely, looking very good. Now I'm going to use that same technique. Right click on our green object, go to transform and reflect. And we're going to do a copy and either use the mouse or better yet the arrow keys to nudge it into place. And again, I want to place it based on my lines and my guidelines and not based on my reference image. Can maybe nudge it just a little that way. Right. So hooray, we've made it green. This is going to be our green layer. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make another new layer. And I do want to make sure that it is on top of my green layer. Okay, so it is. If it's not, click and drag it to its appropriate place. At this point, I want to go ahead and lock my green layer and turn off its visibility. This will now allow me to see the other colored portions on the reference image. Now I'm going to go ahead. We don't have any lines for these guys, so I do have to make them. So I'm going to go ahead and making a new line. And I do want the middle, the fill. So this is still on my green selection. So I'm going to actually go back to a black fill so I can see my line and a nil or nothing invisible fill so I don't cover up my reference image as I go. And I'll just go ahead and again, this is a nice straight line. Whenever it's a nice straight line, you really only need 2 points. And again, I'm going to go and this is all blue. So I am going to follow that all the way. All right, my shape is right there, so I can go ahead and now grab my fill. And just like before, I'm going to try and get a nice color. I can still see a little bit of the blue there. Oh, actually, that wasn't too bad. That's almost perfect. All right. I'll just zoom in and make sure that my color is sitting nicely within my lines. Here I see it's a little bit out. Again, that's one of those things that's probably not going to show up in your end, but if you do want to fix it, always look out too with your white arrow. You want to make sure that you get a hollow line. Sometimes you don't get a hollow line. And you can correct that by reselecting it. And for some reason, it doesn't want to give me a hollow line. Not a hollow, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. See, it's the white point. The white point will allow you to adjust that individual point. If you are using that white arrow, but say the whole thing is moving when you try to move just one point, deselect off of the line or object and reselect it using that white arrow. And for some reason, just sometimes it takes a minute. All right. Now, I feel pretty confident doing this next block of color on this same layer. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I want to make sure that my fill is invisible. What I did is I just switched the fill and the stroke, so my line's going to be blue, but it's okay because I'm going to take it away at the end, so it's a little bit quicker and we'll end with the same result anyway. The important thing is that middle is invisible. And we'll click down here and back up to the armpit. Now I'll select this. And just as we did before, let's get a good color match. Very good, that's pretty good. And it did take away our black line. Now, actually, if I'm looking quite closely, this is seamed in. This is not a print, so these colors are actually seamed in. So it's important that we have a black line to show our seam. So I'm going to go ahead and put a black line on these shapes so we get that nice black line. Now this may mean that I need to adjust a little bit. As we see here, line is getting a little fat, so I'm just going to adjust that line so it sits on top of each other just a little bit more nicely. Okay. Now we are almost there, guys, almost there. See, if I fill in the visibility of my green layer and I toggle off the original image, we have a pretty good polo, but we are not quite done yet. However, what I would like to do now is the back. And the back is actually going to be a lot easier than you think because we've done most of the work for the back already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock all of these layers and I'm going to go ahead and select the entire front. Now, at this point, and you can even do this before you reflect. It's actually a kind of a good idea to do this before you reflect too, is go to Object, Group. Now this is important. So what it's done is it's now linked every component. So I can select Object, Group. Don't make me out to be a liar. I can now select the entire image just by selecting one point. Oh, it's because I have the white arrow, right? Because black arrow selects it all. The white arrow selects individual parts. Sorry about that. But you see, all I have to do is click one thing and I can move it around. This is very, very handy when you have many, many flats, or even just one flat with many different lines and components to it, because you may think that you've selected everything, but you haven't. And if you have them grouped, you can very easily move them around, very easily select them, so on and so forth. I'm going to put that right there. But now what I'm going to do, once the whole thing's all selected, I'm going to copy it, either by hitting Control-C or going to Edit Copy. And we're going to go to Edit Paste or hit Control-V. Okay? I'm going to reflect this because it looks like our back is pretty much a mirror image of our front. And I don't need two copies here, so I can just hit OK. And as you can see, it flipped it, so now our colors are on the correct side. I'm going to place it by our back, and there are a few things that I need to change, mostly by deleting them. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup this so I can individually select some of the items and things on this flat. So I can just go to Ungroup, and now I can now individually select them. And I can go ahead and toggle my visibility here on and off to see what I need to do. Well, I don't have a collar, I don't have this, and I don't have this. So we can go ahead and delete all of those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, since it's a few things, I'm going to go ahead and, oops, Well, no, let's just go ahead and just click and delete. It's probably our safest for right now. If you do end up deleting something like that, just hit Control Z or Edit Undo, and you'll get your image back. Don't worry about it. So let's go in and delete all of our little pieces. Remember, you can hold down the Shift key if you want to select them all. And zoom in if it's a little hard to select. There we go. And let's hold Shift, select that too. Delete this. Delete all these guys. Now I selected the back. If you want to deselect it, just click it again. All right. Now, while I'm up here, we can see this is really where a lot of the differences between the front and the back is. So if I toggle that visibility off, we see that collar coming around up here like this. So I'm going to want to go ahead and simply draw that in, making sure that I have that nice black outline. And it was a little bit of a shape. I'm going to use that green because we had that shape on the front, so I'm going to use it on the back. I'm going to curve our collar. Now, if I wanted to toggle the visibility and go off of my reference image right here, I could certainly do that. I'll fix this shoulder seam so it comes up. Actually, we don't have that shoulder seam, so that's one of the things we have to delete. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it instead of just fix it. And you might be wondering why I didn't continue this around. That's because anything that can be reflected should be reflected. Using those arrow keys to nudge it into place. All right. So that takes care of our top. And if we remember, we had that asymmetric hem, so we do not see where the hem, oops, deleted the blue, Control Z if you make a mistake. I'm going to move this down. This is on the inside, so we don't see it. But we do see it, the top stitch here. It will be finished on the front and back. As you can see, you see it here. It's kind of twisting away. You see it a little bit better over here. It's kind of fit, but it's there. Move this guy down. Delete this guy. And shift this guy into place. There we are. So that was easy. I hope you didn't think we'd have to do a whole new one for the back, but we don't. That's what the beauty of Illustrator. The only thing we got to do now is we got to finish up a little bit of doodads on the front to call it done. I'm going to go ahead, zoom in. Now, we got to do those buttons. Oops, sorry about that. And what I want to do is I am going to toggle the visibility of this layer off so we can see the buttons, not only the button size, but the button placement. And I'm going to go ahead and in this rectangle tool, just like in that eraser tool, if I hold the mouse button down when I click it, it shows us some alternative tools. I'm going to choose the ellipse tool. I'm going to come here and I'm going to, you might have noticed that when we merged or grouped, when we grouped our lines, they all skipped to one layer. So I don't actually have anything going on with layer 4 or layer 3 right now. So I'm going to use one of these guys, and I do want this to be on top because I want my buttons to be on top. So I can go ahead and simply move it up. So let's move that up. So when I toggle the visibility of this on, it will be on top. Now I'm going to hold the shift key. When I use the ellipse tool or rectangle tool or anything else and hold the shift key, it will constrain it to a perfect circle in this case. If you're using that rectangle tool, it will make sure it is a perfect square. Now what we have is that dotted line still there. But what I want is I want the color of this button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my eyedropper tool and sample the button. I do want a nice black stroke though, so I'm going to change the stroke. And I do want this to be, I like my button lines to be a little bit thinner too, so I'm going to make that a little bit thinner too. Now, this is fine, but if you want to be kind of a little extra, you see it's not everything a button has to offer. It has also how it is supposed to be stitched on. So if you want to be a little bit extra, you can go ahead and put the cross stitch or the button stitching here as well. And I'll just go in and draw a little bit of an X right in here. Again, don't be afraid of your zoom and don't be afraid to adjust if you need it. Another neat thing about stroke is we can go ahead and adjust in that the same place where we do our top stitch. These guys will adjust the edges of it. So you see that'll look a little bit closer to sort of the lump that a thread makes when we do it. But we do want it to be that color. So let's go ahead and sample that color. And since it's just a line, click and drag it into here. Unfortunately, it did take off of our caps and forgot our thinner line. I do want a thinner line. There we go. And don't worry though, because once I figure it out, I can use my eyedropper tool for the next one I want to do. And for the next button, of course, all I got to do is select the whole thing, copy, and paste. And again, this would be a really great thing to group, especially if you had a whole bunch of buttons. Now, unlike my reference image, I want to use it for sort of placement, but I do want to make sure that it is right in the middle here. I don't want it to be any askew. So let's see how that all looks together. Pretty good. Maybe this one can be nudged a little bit. That's probably too much. Actually, this probably looks better there. Okay. All right. So we got our buttons. Next thing let's do our label, and we're going to do our label in a very similar way. I'm going to toggle off our layer 2 and work on layer 4. Use that rectangle tool. Right in there. Let's go ahead and make it blue. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice black stroke. And we can do these little guys as well. Don't worry about the text. We're not going to get that into it. And you can forget it. If you want to do that little guy too, you can do that little guy, but I'm not going to worry about it. All right, not bad. The last thing that we want to do is a little bit of clarification. And actually at this point, I don't need my original image, so I'm going to toggle off that visibility and you can see what our finished flat will look like. And you can say, oh, we got to actually, let's center our tag a little bit better. Better. The last thing I'm going to want to do is I want to create a little bit of shadow. Now, whenever we have, if we sort of take a look at this, this is the inside of the neck. This is actually the back of the garment. We can see the back of the collar here and a little bit of the inside of the shirt. Same thing down here. This is the back side that we only can see because the front hem ends short. Now, what we do is we will actually shade these parts so the different layers of the garment are a little bit clearer. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to go ahead and do that on yet another layer. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer, make sure it's on top of everything else, and go ahead and just for ease, I'm going to lock everything else. Now let's make the shadow up here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a shape of this entire shape right here, this shape that I want to shade, which is the inner portion of the shirt. Okay. And I'm going to do it just like anything else with an invisible fill, just so I can see what I'm doing as I go. Now, all right. Now that my shape is created, I'm going to go ahead and click on the fill and add in a sort of gray color. I'm going to then also make a nil fill. You could fill in the stroke with gray as well, but it tends to mesh a little bit better if you leave it as a nil fill. If it doesn't seem to be filling up the area quite as well, you can extend the gray to the stroke to see if it fills it up better. Now what I want to do is, while this is selected, my gray shape is selected, I'm going to go to Properties. And underneath Stroke, we have Opacity. And opacity will change it to be a little bit more see-through. So I'm going to go ahead and simply reduce the opacity until I get a little bit of a shadow. I can see all my details underneath, but it's getting a little bit darker. And I'm going to remember the opacity that I use because I'm going to use the same for down there as well. So we'll do 69. You know, you want to be able to see it, but you don't want to block out any of those details. So that looks good around there, around, between 65 and 70. Okay. So now I can see, oh, this is very clear. This is the inside of the garment, and I have no question about that. Now down here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go ahead and fill it in while my fill is in negative, so I don't cover up when I'm trying to shade. Boop. All right. And of course, just like before, while that is selected, I can use that eyedropper tool up here to give me the same sort of gray, the same opacity. As you can see, it changed right there. And so now we are finished. Hooray! You've just completed your first flat. And this is actually a hard one because it's all colored and there's lots of little details. Many of the flats that you'll do from here will actually be easier. So, hooray. All right, now that you are done, you can go and save it. Now remember that if you use one of these options, it will save it as an Illustrator file, which will show up as a .ai. That's fine. If you don't have time to finish your work and you want to continue working on it, you should save it as an AI. That will save all your lines and your anchor points and everything like that. However, when you're done and you're ready to submit this work, you want to export the image. And you're going to go down to export and you're going to go to export as. And you are going to name it your name Polo flat. And the drop-down menu as save as type will include JPEG. It might not automatically be set to JPEG, so click down and choose JPEG, as that will be the required file format for your submission. And once you have named your file, made sure it is saved as a JPEG. Again, wherever you want to save it, export it. Right here, you have your options. I don't need this to be a super high maximum file. Medium is more than enough, more than fine for this assignment. It will also be easier for me to open. It'll be easier and quicker for you to upload if it's not a super giant file. So medium is fine. Small might be a little bit too grainy, too small. And then just hit OK. And then you should be able to find your file wherever you saved it to, or I should say export. All right, guys, hope this was helpful. And I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.